So like I already said, Sobek, good matchup in the Emoja. Throw into big disadvantage because it's probably her worst matchup in the game. Serb is a pretty decent god into Sobek. He punishes without ulting. If Sobek blinks in, misses it, Serb just kind of twos and plays at a distance that knockup can't hit him, and then shreds a lot of his tankiness. And he kind of forces out Sobek ult if Sobek ever misses the pluck. If he does get plucked, he kind of just jumps away. If he knows the pluck's coming, he can ult it. He has sustain like Sobek does. His kit is kind of a lot like Sobek in what it does. It's just Sobek has a little bit more displacement just in base cooldowns, but these gods are pretty mirror of what they do with each other. And against each other, they're basically the same thing, and they have a pretty even matchup. Hercules, in this god's actual 1v1 matchup, Sobek has a better advantage into Herc than Herc has into Sobek because they look to kind of just trade into each other and displace the other person. But Sobek's is just easier. Plucking the guy in front of you and just knocking him behind you is way easier than trying to get at a perfect distance to 2 him in or get behind them and then to push them towards your team. It's just way easier to play Sobek into Hercules than it is to play Hercules into Sobek. Also, if you hit pluck, you have free anti-heal onto the Hercules, and then you can also slow him, and Herc has a bad time playing into slows. Horus, kind of the same as Herc. Sobek just disrupts kind of what a lot of Horus does. If you know Horus is going to look to 2, and he doesn't blink and then 2 right on top of you, Sobek can just tail whip it and knock him out of it, and then Horus is just sitting there with a knockup that probably not a lot of damage is going to come out on. Also, Sobek is one of the few gods that is tanky enough to eat a Horus combo and not die to it and not worry about it because he has sustain also. There's one other god that actually has a pretty decent matchup and can live against Horus combo, and that's Fafnir, but Fafnir doesn't have the heal like Sobek does. He just jumps away kind of after getting CC'd and then heals himself. You can't really lock him down that well. And if you do go tank boots on Fafnir, most of the time, if he 2s you, you can jump away. You have enough time to jump away from the CCR and how quick your jump is. Aries into Sobek, this is a pretty even matchup. It really is dependent on how Aries plays with his chains. If Aries can hit his chains against the Sobek, because Sobek will not be able to play aggressive if Aries is just holding his chains, waiting for the pluck, and then just chaining the pluck. The one thing that Aries does have is if he does miss chains, like against most gods, if he does miss chains, he's very, very bad and very easy to kill. But say the Aries player is good, he can hit his chains when he needs to. There's a pretty even matchup, and I actually think in the early to mid game, once Aries has like 4 points into his chains, it's a very good matchup for Aries, and he can have the damage to kill the Sobek, while Sobek really can't do too much damage to the Aries. At some points in the game, Aries has a slight advantage against Sobek if he can hit his chains. Braucken, probably the worst matchup into Sobek. You kind of look to combo people, and Sobek doesn't allow that. Like if you ult, blink ult, Sobek just knocks you back and then dashes away. If you blink stun and then ult, and then try to stun again, he just knocks you up and dashes away. There's just not enough time for Braucken to get his entire kit off onto the Sobek and lock him down and allow his team to kill that tanky crocodile. I'm a crocodile! Than most gods allow. And if Sobek is caught out without his dash, he just ults, and Braucken really doesn't do too much against that. So Braucken's got a pretty bad matchup, and he can't really tremor. Sobek has 2 forms of CC to knock around the tremor. I think Faf is one of the better gods into Sobek because he just lives. He's a god that just avoids the laning phase kind of against the Sobek, because if you pluck him, he dashes away. If you pluck him and it's enough time for him to get his stun off, then the pluck doesn't even go off and you just get stunned and you just get booped in the nose and stop it. Pretty easy matchup for Fafnir, and then Fafnir's just going to do a lot more than Sobek will late game. A slight advantage for Fafnir into the Sobek. Another god that's pretty even, or maybe a slight advantage, he just kind of just doesn't allow Sobek to do what Sobek wants to do. Sobek wants to pluck you and kill the person that he plucks. Most of the time, Terra knows a pluck is about to happen. She just 2s or 3s, so she's knockup immune, and then Sobek can't really do anything else. And if played right, the Terra can kind of 2 herself, clap it after Sobek plucks, and then just try to kill the Sobek before his ult goes off because of how much CC and stun damage and just everything that she does. Yes, the anti-heal is a little bit of a problem for Terra, but I still like the Terra matchup in the Sobek. And another one, kind of just the same thing. Another god that does not mind getting plucked. If you pluck the Shinchen, he 3s away again, and he's out. Or if he knows it's coming, he just jumps it. If he knows it's coming and he doesn't have a jump, he just ults it. If he does get plucked, he doesn't have his 3 or his ult, he is just naturally a super tanky character, and he's got HP 5 and he can interrupt with his 2. Like, it is very hard to kill a Shinchen off pluck, and that's why it's a pretty good matchup for him into Sobek. Sobek is what Baccus wants to be. He's an anti-heal character that tries to CC in an area kind of off flop / off pluck, and then just a lot of damage and then a big ult. That their characters are basically the same thing with slight differences basically on their engage, but Sobek just does everything that Baccus does, but better kind of, and more CC. So, and Baccus can't really confirm his 3 because Sobek just plucks him out of it. If Baccus ever flops in, Sobek just ults it or plucks him back farther to his team, or does get knocked up and doesn't care because he's Sobek. So yeah, Sobek, just a good matchup into Baccus. Ganesh, pretty bad matchup into Sobek. He doesn't really worry about the pluck, but it's just so easy to knock around Ganesh and just CC him. And if he's not focused his silence on you the entire time, your pluck is so fast and your 2 is so fast that you just knock him out of it and then pluck him towards your team. Ganesh does have a good amount of damage that can maybe punish the Sobek sometimes, but Ganesh's kit is just not strong enough to be able to counter the Sobek. If you're playing the Ganesh and you're worried about getting plucked the entire time and you do get plucked, if you do get plucked, you're probably going to die because Sobek can just body block you. And then you do maybe even get your dash off. Sobek just ults and then you're slowed. Just not a great matchup for Ganesh. A lot of edge to Sobek here.
Capri.
Another very bad matchup into Sobek. Another reason that Capri is probably not that favored right now is because a lot of the top gods are just good into Capri. The one thing I will say is late game, Capri does have a decent matchup if Sobek is plucking somebody that's not Capri. Because usually you go Sunder on Capri and you 2 someone, and usually Sunder 2 late game with your Hunter or your Mage hitting whoever you did that combo to, you can kill him. So yes, you can kill the Sobek late game with that Capri combo, but you are probably not getting that late into the game because of how hard the laning phase will be to you, how hard it is to not die against the Sobek because of how quick his blink is, how easy it is to disrupt Capri knockup or Capri dash with knockup. Capri's bad into slows, and then if Capri is forced to just keep ulting someone that gets plucked or forced to ult himself when he does get plucked, that is exactly what you want. You want to be able to just use base cooldowns, kill the Capri or kill who's ever plucked, and then re-engage with actual cooldowns. This is a pretty even matchup. I think Kuzambo is a character that doesn't mind getting plucked if he's ahead. But if he's behind and Sobek can kind of get rid of his passive with... If most of you guys don't know that Kuzambo's passive is he gets mitigations unless he's knocked, I think it's up or back or pulled or something like that. Sobek has 2 ways to do that with Kuzambo. It's just 1 and his 2, and they're base cooldowns. So if Sobek plucks Kuzambo and he's already taken a little bit of damage, he removes that mitigation that Kuzambo gets from his passive and makes Kuzambo just as squishy as most gods are. When Kuzambo was kind of meta a couple years ago or whatever it was, I liked playing Sobek into it because you just get rid of his passive kind of and make him like any other god, not that tanky. And Thorns isn't that good anymore, so even if you do get plucked and you pop your 2 pop Thorns, you can usually kill him through that, especially with like a Sunder or something. But yeah, right now, Kuzambo's got a pretty even matchup. I'd maybe even say slight disadvantage just because what he wants to do is just mitigate it a lot by Sobek. It's very hard for Kuzambo to use his 3 because it's easy to interrupt with Sobek's 2. Mulan, terrible matchup into Sobek. Terrible matchup into Sobek. You're trying to kill the enemy support or the enemy ADC with Mulan in the 2v2, and Sobek just doesn't allow that. He interrupts most of her damage. He puts her out of position, which she does not want. He heals up most of her poke. And then if she ever does ult in and he ults it, she's just stuck there while he's just charging up this massive ult. Overall, bad matchup for Mulan. Very good matchup for Sobek. Another bad matchup for Ymir. Probably his only other bad matchup in the game is Sobek. What he wants to do is just kill the enemy support. He wants to wall him, kill him. Sobek kind of counters that a little bit by saying, you're not locked in here with me, or I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. If Ymir walls him, Sobek just plucks him back to his team. Sobek can usually outlive that Ymir unless that Ymir or that Ymir's team is just farther ahead. So what they kind of do is they want to kill the other one, but it's a lot easier for Sobek to kill the Ymir because of how lockdown works and how just safe Sobek is and how much protection Sobek gets. For the most part, Ymir may win the laning phase, but Sobek just mitigates it just by just getting away from him. Another god who has a bad matchup into Sobek. You dash in, he plucks you, you're back into his team, he's fine. It's literally all it is to it. I'm actually going to throw him into big disadvantage because it's just not a good matchup for Athena. RDO, another pretty bad matchup. Cripple is 2. I mean, you cripple his pluck maybe, but for the most part, you're just getting tossed around, anti-healed. Can't complete most of your abilities because of Sobek. You can't really win the 2v2 hard enough pre-5 with RDO against Sobek. Geb, another horrible matchup. Not that Geb in a team is bad into Sobek, but Geb into Sobek overall is just pretty bad because you're just going to try to kill the Geb as much as you can early game, and it's pretty easy to do it as Sobek. You just pluck him into your team. As soon as he starts to roll out, you just 2 him, knock him out of that, and then he's at the end either forced to ult and then roll out, which you get out his ult on a pluck, or he's just gonna die. So bad matchup for Goomba. Goomba, another just not good god, and I'm not gonna go into these two too much either, but they're both the same thing. You both kind of just pluck them, and then they're just pretty easy to kill, and they don't really punish Sobek for plucking. Sylvanas a lot more than Goomba, because Goomba can maybe live through the pluck, but Sylvanas can't. But that is just some basic matchup stuff for these top tiers, playing against other just guardians and higher tier warrior supports. For the next video, I'll probably be doing the Ymir. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, maybe leave a like, comment, subscribe if you still haven't. So hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you again for watching the video. Peace out.